This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. In 2022, Sony launched this new PS Plus service. Now, instead of one option, there would be this 3-tier system to choose from, each having their own perks and benefits. The top tier is one of the more interesting offerings because it meant that you could get retro side of things. Sony has a strong and rich history of exclusive characters and games. They sadly keep many of them locked away and do not bring many of them out to celebrate them. Nintendo is guilty of this too, as they generally focus a lot of their time on the most popular icons, but do not provide titles or even remasters for their other beloved characters they have. But at least there are instances where they try to celebrate them, like with the Super Smash games, but Sony doesn't really have anything like that to really be able to do anything for their historical characters. So with the proposition of potentially seeing some oldies come back, this was gonna get interesting. With this top tier of PS Plus, players would have access to PS1, PSP, and PS2 games. On the surface level, I really like this idea. Offering up games from prior generations is a great way to expand your current catalog and expose a new audience to those games, characters, and even worlds they may not even know about. Plus, on the other side of things, it would be helping to preserve Sony's long and rich history. Many of us have grown up with a lot of those titles. Now we fast forward to today, and while there have been a good share of good oldies, Sony has been lacking in their execution on what they could provide. I will praise them for making many of the Siphon Filter games available, along with some PSP gems like Pursuit Force. But where are the other titles from the PS1 and even PSP that haven't even made the appearance yet? You can make an argument for many games that Sony needs to bring back, and honestly, if I had it my way, bring them all back. Even the more obscure yet charming ones like, say, Tiny Tank. But one Sony exclusive that should be made available, and honestly more importantly remastered, is Blasto. So today, let's spend some time with this flawed yet very charming PS1 game.
You hunk!
I'm a laser-toting love magnet. Oops, that's gonna leave a stain.
During the PS1 generation, Sony was very focused to find mascots that could represent their new console. When you look at Nintendo, you immediately think of characters like Mario, Zelda, Samus, along with many others. Sony wanted that for their system, and they especially wanted to see this coming from one of their internal studios. Blasto is going to be one such character and game for the PS1. This game would take on an action platformer design and feature some impressive ideas within it. For one, the developers wanted to go for a more cartoony-like look to its game. Levels were going to be these vast areas that after the initial loading for the level, there would be no in-game loading needed. Plus, if the player wanted to say go back to a prior point in the level, they could do this seamlessly. As Blasto, players would be able to jump to other platforms, climb, along with being able to use a very useful sidestep that would act as one of the best means for defense while in combat. The jumping and shooting would go hand in hand. Blasto would always be armed with his blaster. It could even be charged up to do more damage, along with finding upgrades to use new and deadly weapons. The development team wanted to prove what could be done within a 3D space. At the time, this was a big jump from the prior generation, and for many developers, they were now playing within a new field. Again, the team wanted to achieve these massive levels for the time, and laying out a hierarchy of goals for the player was a way that they intended to help the players stay on mission and hopefully not get too lost. Many elements were coming together, but they were still missing one important piece for their project. Blasto needed a voice.
Looks like you've got yourself in a bit of trouble there. Now you just hang in there, babe, and I'll be right back. Don't worry your pretty little head. Blasto to the rescue. Nyang, nyang. Well, hello, nurse. Say, you're swell.
When creating Blasto, the developers always envisioned Phil Hartman as their guy. At the time, Hartman's son was a big fan of the PS1. Sony PR reached out to Phil to see if he would be interested. Phil said yes and wanted to take the job for his son. The team cited Phil as pretty much making everything better and had everyone in the studio laughing throughout his entire recording. His delivery was masterful. Now, while everything was looking to align for Blasto, this project was hit with a lot of challenges. Everything from higher up pressure from Sony, along with time constraints resulting in levels being removed and mechanics just not being used that weren't properly finished before launch. Probably the two biggest challenges was the team faced a death internally with one of the developers, and then later on with Phil Hartman. This resulted in Sony eliminating any marketing for the game, as they did not want to appear like they were capitalizing on Phil Hartman's death. Critics slammed the game when it released. Some points I understand, others not so much. This is a title that I'm a bit conflicted with myself. I really like the mix of the jumping and the shooting. Some of the details in the shooting are really impressive, like how your blaster can completely vaporize an enemy. The different weapons that you could pick up were fun to use as well, like a rocket gun or flamethrower. Plus the game starts off pretty strong. You start to get comfortable with the controls, experience some action, and it's well paced. Issues really start to crop up in level 2 and 3. It's impressive how long and big some of the levels are, but it can really hurt the pacing of the game. For example, level 2 feels like something that should have been chopped up into a few other levels. Along with that, level 2 feels like a mid to late game level, not something that you should get right after finishing level 1. If level 1 was dipping your toe in the pool, then level 2 is if someone just pushed you in head first. Things are not helped by the confusing map as well, but this is something that did not feel play tested at all. One thing that really elevates the entire game a lot is Phil Hartman's delivery and lines. He is consistently commenting on everything based on your actions. In worst case, you'll just smile, but most of the time, I was laughing. He really brings a lot of heart and soul into this title. When everything is working right, you can see the magic and what the developers were trying to go for here. It very much feels like a product of a less than ideal development. Plus, the music in this game is top notch, easily one of the best soundtracks on the PS1. The music was composed by the legend Chuck Dowd, who would go on to do the music for the Siphon Filter series. The dynamic tracks gave Blasto a cinematic quality and enhances every action greatly. As you can see, there are a lot of pieces that work really well in this game. The foundation is there. I think Blasto is something that needed more time to refine it further. So I have a request for Sony. One, they should do a re-release of the original Blasto, as it was for everyone to experience on the PS4 and 5. Give us the game as it originally came out, warts and all. At the same time, I think a remaster similar to what was done with the medieval one for the PS4 would be a great offering for PlayStation players. The art style still holds up really well, and if a new team got the time to properly refine and iron out the gameplay, maybe even improve the pacing and give the game a new coat of paint that kept in line with the original art style, then we could potentially have a better version of the game that respects the original. Blasto is an important title of Sony's history. Yes, he is a failed mascot at the same time, but there is something special here, plus more content with Phil Hartman is always a good thing. As an extra for the remaster, if Sony still has the recordings, this sort of stuff should be included as extras in the game, or even weaved into the experience with new lines popping in for Hartman. They apparently recorded over 8 hours of Blasto content. I'd be happy to listen to all of it. Now realistically, I do think Sony will do some of this. There is a decent chance that Sony will eventually release the PS1 digital version for players to buy on their current gen consoles. I do think it's rather low to expect Sony to do a remaster for the game. They seem to be more focused on very similar types of games, and honestly, losing a bit of their way. A Blasto-like experience is not something that I think they will make big money on, but I also think by having mid-tier games come out just like this, helps to enhance and flesh out your catalog. It helps to give us players something interesting, and it helps to vary your portfolio as well. Either way, I hope to see Blasto come back in some way, and who knows, when the AAA companies fail to continue or bring back a series, this is usually where we look to the indie market to make a spiritual successor for it. So maybe that will happen one day. Have you played Blasto? Would you like to see it come back in some way? Let me know all of this in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.